Story 1. In my early 20s, I got into trouble with the law and spent 3 months in county jail. I remember people there comparing which county jail had the best food and beds. I turned my life around at that point. Story 2. My nephew's biological father chose to abandon his son because he was going to become a successful country music star. 2 years later, he was found dead on the side of a desolate road in New Mexico, mostly consumed by buzzards. The cause of death was later determined to be acute alcohol poisoning. Story 3. My biological mother was engaged to a man working abroad for a year. She promised to wait for him. In the meantime, she had a one-night stand with a man she met at a hen party and didn't know his name, which resulted in her getting pregnant with me. She hid the pregnancy from her family and considered keeping me. When her fiancé returned, she decided she didn't want me and would rather be with him. She never informed him about me. Ultimately, she gave me up for adoption and never looked back. I have half-brothers and half-sisters who don't know I exist. Story 4. My father raped my mother and got away with it. Afterward, he assaulted another woman and went to prison for 1 year and 3 months. He had the audacity to text me when he got out, asking for his guitars back that I was holding for him. I sold them out of spite, and now my family thinks I am a terrible person for not wanting anything to do with him while supporting a rapist. He is scum. This all happened after he abandoned me for 18 years and tried to re-enter my life after the child support was paid off. Story 5. I know someone who went from pushing 500 pounds down to 150. They lost the equivalent of 2 people's worth of weight. Story 6. My best friend's dad went to prison for 7 years on drug-related charges and was a deadbeat before. However, my best friend and her little sister visited him every weekend. The second he got out of jail, he never spoke to my best friend or her little sister again. He is a reformed Christian man who has a baby with a woman no one knows. My best friend had her first child and sent a baby photo to him, having obtained his address from her grandmother on his side. The photo was returned as undeliverable. This was 2 years ago, and they definitely live in that house. Story 7. When I was living with my old roommate, who was a cannabis dealer, a man started coming around. I was about 29 and had only moved in with a dealer because my previous roommate decided not to renew our lease with 1 week to go. The dealer was my former college roommate, so we had lived together before. This man was about 38 and worked as a club promoter. Everyone else at the house enjoyed his company, but all I saw was a man with 2 children going through a divorce. He had a decent career in information technology until he followed his dreams and started using a lot of drugs. It took about 3 weeks before he upset everyone else too, and they were lamenting how cool he seemed at first. I responded, "Did you not listen to him? We just watched a man throw his entire life away over ecstasy and Xanax." Story 8. A friend, now an ex-boyfriend. The last time I saw him, he was 60 and still stealing, scamming, and using. A whole life wasted. Story 9. My dad. I was raised by a single mom who just happened to have a husband. He is now living that life of, I don't know why none of my kids talk to me. It's a mystery. Story 10. The sister of a close friend is the most unpleasant person I have ever encountered. She keeps a record of every negative thing my friend has done and tries to bring them up whenever possible to embarrass her or make her feel inferior. For example, she might say, "Remember when you were 5 and broke my Barbie?" She also looks for any reason to be offended during conversations. The last time I saw her, which I hope is for the last time, she accused me of being racist for enjoying a television show with a predominantly white cast. She embodies bitterness and cruelty. Interestingly, she has a creative side hustle, and on her social media, where she uses a pen name, every post is essentially, "Oh my goodness, your work is so amazing. You are a total genius. Everyone should check out your stuff. I am so happy for you." Yet I can tell that in private she resents all these people. Story 11. I don't judge people like that, but I remember one guy who complained, saying, "I get so many people pregnant." Story 12. My brother is 34 now. He is unemployed, living with my mom, paying no rent or bills, and spends his nights playing video games on his phone. He has no license and no car, and he can be quite difficult to deal with. I remember visiting my mom when my brother came out of his room in his underwear, playing Fortnite on his phone, and it sounded like he was playing with a child. Story 13. My friend's brother-in-law. Before he married my friend's sister, she basically supported him, acted as his taxi, and generally fulfilled a maternal role for him. She did this for the better part of 6 years before they got married. He is like a man-child, often throwing passive-aggressive tantrums when he does not get his way. Imagine a fully grown man, arms folded and pouting, because the friend group did not want to go to a snooker shop. He has a multitude of health problems due to being overweight, barely washes, and often has an unpleasant odor. He is possibly the only person for whom we would prefer him to keep his shoes on indoors because both his feet and shoes smell terrible. He believes he is always the smartest person in the room and frequently offers unsolicited advice that is, more often than not, terrible. My friend ended up buying them their first home because her brother-in-law was not working, and they could not afford to rent, let alone buy. He did not get his first full-time job until his mid-30s, after the birth of his first child. There was always an excuse not to get a job. It has been a frustrating relationship to witness over the years because her sister could do better. She is smart, educated, funny, pretty, and has a good job. Yet, for whatever reason, she found someone so opposite to her irresistible. Her entire family has intervened at one point or another to help her reconsider. To me, the brother-in-law is a massive loser, but he would be in a much worse position if it were not for his wife. Story 14. I lived next to a man in the late 1990s who was in his 30s. He lived in a trailer with his father in South Florida. He was unkempt, careless, and struggled with alcoholism. He bragged about hiring a sex worker and would often comment on women he passed with remarks such as, "nice figure" or "grow hair." He would spend $150 on airbrush tank tops featuring Rusty Wallace and Miller Lite imagery, despite not being able to afford them. In a bar fight, he attempted to use the finishing move known as the Stone Cold Stunner, made famous by wrestler Stone Cold Steve Austin, 2 nights in a row against the same man. He was defeated both times. Story 15. In my younger years, a coworker stopped coming in one day. We eventually found him in the local police reports. He had been acquiring photos and videos of minors, which is often referred to as child sexual abuse. My boss eventually retrieved the coworker's work laptop minus the hard drive, and he was convicted and deported since he was in the United States on a work visa. Story 16. My father thinks he is a tough guy. He is not intelligent and tends to lie frequently. The only individuals he ever exercised control over were children. He lived in a van for 5 years and now resides in an abandoned schoolhouse. Story 17. A neighborhood kid who used his age and conventional good looks to exploit almost an entire block was later convicted of abusing his own daughter. He still denies any wrongdoing and looks me in the eyes, as if I don't know the truth. Story 18. My brother is an irresponsible father to 3 children, each with a different mother. He is unproductive in all areas of life. The oldest child attempted to reconnect, believing he was the cool dad she had missed out on. However, this was short-lived as she quickly realized his shortcomings. The final blow came when she informed him that she no longer wanted to see him, and he responded by removing her from his Disney Plus account. Story 19. Looks in the mirror at 3 a.m. after playing Oblivion Remaster for 17 hours. A game I've previously played for hundreds of hours. Hello darkness, my old friend. Me. Story 20. I worked with a person in his 40s who was hitting on teenagers at work and had assault charges on his record. He lives in his parents' house, which is filled with overflowing trays of cigarettes. Before I knew his true nature, I tried to be his friend, and that was my mistake. He doesn't drink anything but Mountain Dew and sweet tea. I eventually told him to leave me alone, and it resulted in him stalking me. Additionally, he was fired after multiple people complained about him sexually harassing them. He is truly a disgusting individual. Story 21. A former neighbor of mine was the village alcoholic. He was friendly enough when I saw him going to the liquor store every day, but he was a poor husband and father. Eventually, his wife left him and he ended up living in a tent. His current residence is a prison where he is serving a life sentence for murdering his only friend, another homeless person who managed to secure social housing, which made him jealous. Story 22. My wife's first husband got her pregnant right after she graduated high school. They got married and he joined the army. Before my stepson was born, the marriage ended due to his infidelities. Shortly after that, he was absent without leave from the army and was discharged. He and his family did a lot of terrible things to my wife. To summarize, he ended up with multiple children from different mothers and has more than 6 kids. He never held a job for more than a couple of months and did not make any effort to pay child support, quitting any job once his wages were garnished. He ultimately lost both legs below the knee due to mismanagement of his diabetes. My son, now with a family of his own, wants nothing to do with him. His father ruined any chance of a relationship by putting immense pressure on him for years to leave us and live with him. As far as I know, none of his children have much to do with him. A lifelong narcissist. Jason, I hope you read this and know it's about you. Story 23. My former boss. I have lived in Florida for over 20 years, and he was the first genuinely racist person I have ever met. He was not someone who simply lacked understanding. He called my Haitian coworker Kunta Kinte and would launch into rants, assuming I shared his sentiments. I do not. I moved here for the culture. I documented everything, brought it to the company owner and the chief financial officer and human resources, and got rid of him. They gave me his position. Story 24. I have known 2 such individuals. Both were acquaintances and extremely promiscuous. They abandoned lovely wives and children and pursued casual relationships without regard. One was worse than the other. He never held a job, constantly asked everyone for cigarettes, and claimed to be an actor. Despite this, he attracted both beautiful and less attractive women. The one who depended on others had an ex-wife who was a doctor. I overheard him on the phone with his daughter, saying, "Daddy will see you soon, all right? He just has some important business and is out of town." In reality, he was at the bar drinking with us and leaving with whichever woman remained at the end of the night. Some may criticize me for saying this, but he often went home with women who were not appealing, as well as some who were attractive. They were simply individuals who chose casual relationships over their families. Story 25. My father is a bully who abuses people and pets, and on top of that, he is racist. Story 26. In 2005 to 2008, I worked in a residential treatment center for boys who had been abused and neglected and were too intensive for foster care. We are talking about kids with near irreversible mental damage based on the extreme things they had seen and experienced. The facility was situated in a rural area, making staffing a challenge. Generally, anyone who could pass the background check would be hired, and those who could not handle the job would be weeded out during the first shift. It was a demanding role. Staff were provided with living arrangements on site and worked 4 days on and 3 days off, with a rotating schedule. A new employee and his girlfriend joined the team. The girlfriend was genuinely wonderful, good with the kids and at her job. However, the new guy was an absolute disappointment. This was in 2007, and he was determined to start a boy band. He spent his time practicing singing and dancing instead of working, taking over communal spaces to watch boy band-related content, and posting excessively on social media platforms looking for like-minded individuals to form this group. We attempted to push him out, advising him to stop practicing at work and consider searching for another job. He lasted about 4 weeks before he convinced an outgoing 18-year-old with an intellectual disability to forego the transition plan established by his therapists and move in with him and his girlfriend, whom he would unknowingly support with his supplemental security income checks. Fast forward a month. The young man he deceived ended up on the streets, while the aspiring boy band member had moved on to pursue his dreams elsewhere. He was the biggest disappointment I have ever encountered. Story 27. Someone who cheats in a competitive video game fits a particular stereotype. An underdeveloped, sociopathic individual lacking personality. Story 28. I used to know a guy named Matt who dropped out of high school. He lived with his mother, had no job, and showed no desire to do anything. always making excuses for being late or not showing up at all. Things took a turn for the worse when he started dating an awful girlfriend, Susie, who cheated on him. A mutual friend, Kyle, informed him about the infidelity, and then Susie publicly declared that she wished Kyle would die. Matt demanded that Kyle apologize to Susie for revealing the truth, and in turn, Matt apologized to the guy who was involved with his girlfriend, Susie. Despite this, Matt would give Susie rides to the other guys' houses, and we all thought she was definitely seeing those guys. He disappeared for a while, but a few years ago he contacted us, saying he was back in town because his mother had died of cancer. Even though he was dishonest and shady, I decided to reconnect with him and invited him over. He didn't show up and ignored my phone calls. 9 months later, I received a random text from him. Even though I had blocked his number, it looks like the block didn't transfer to my new phone. He mentioned that he had extra tickets to a concert, but he didn't explain why he never showed up before. Anyway, last week, I discovered that his mother didn't die after all. And that is the biggest loser I have ever met in my life. Story 29. It is difficult to choose just one. The worst example might be a friend's brother. He has 6 children by 5 different women, supports none of them, and has repeatedly been in and out of jail, even fleeing the United States to avoid incarceration. He also stole $10,000 from his sister, money that could have been life-changing for her. There may be more I am unaware of, but this is what I know. The world would likely be better off without him. Story 30. My ex-boyfriend, aside from the domestic abuse he inflicted on me and many other women, leads a very sad and unfulfilling life. Some of my favorite reasons include that he never cleaned, never wore boxers, I found unpleasant stains on his joggers, never showered, only ever ate fast food, sat around smoking cannabis all day, quit his job as a chef to pursue cryptocurrency full-time, and lost all his money, and tried to cheat on me multiple times but failed. He was always obsessed with money and being the next big thing, while I was the one who paid for everything, which I admit makes me somewhat of a loser too. Story 31. My former boss was the owner of a printing company. He cheated on his wife and then hired her after he was caught so he could control her work schedule and know her whereabouts. She believes she is keeping an eye on him, but he meets with clients every day, despite having none as the owner, and had others in my position handle client interactions. He hired me and immediately decided he didn't like me. He was verbally abusive every day, which wasn't enough for him, so he moved me into his office to watch over my shoulder and insult me constantly. Sometimes he would trap me by sitting on my desk to berate me without distraction, slamming his fist on my chair and the desk to intimidate me. He constantly complained about my height, as I am 6 feet tall and he was just under 5 feet. This became part of his verbal abuse, claiming that women had no reason to be so tall and questioning why women wouldn't date shorter men. I pointed out that he was married and shouldn't care about that, which was a mistake. The next day, he decided to throw a party at work. I didn't want to attend and preferred to continue working with my client. He came into my office and yelled at me for not participating, then gave me a beer to loosen up, which I refused, citing a medical condition. He became louder and more aggressive, and I cried and finally drank it, knowing it would make me sick. He had already prepared paperwork and fired me on the spot for insubordination for refusing to drink the beer and for being intoxicated at work. Story 32. An old friend of mine is upset because he cannot see his son. He travels to another state to be with a random woman and her children and takes pictures with them. What a disappointment. Story 33. A coworker's ex-husband is a trip, and not in a good way. He is around 40 and 8 years older than her. He was grooming her when she was a minor because they have been together since then. He looks like a typical male guest on a daytime talk show. Rail thin with bright eyes, a silly peach fuzz mustache, and hair sticking up in random places. He wears baggy clothes, and his appearance resembles a character from a comedic skit. He cannot hold a job. He either gets fired or walks out within a week every time because he doesn't like authority or being told what to do. I was a supervisor when she started with the company. He picked her up once and threatened to fight me because I asked her to return to the office for some paperwork she had forgotten. He said, "What is he saying to you that he can't say in front of me?" I am significantly larger than him, so picking a fight would not have been wise and showed poor judgment. He actually tried working for us and quit within a week, sending his resignation to the wrong phone number. So we didn't even know he had left until he didn't show up. He is also emotionally abusive, and we have all begged her to cut ties with him, but they have children together. During their arguments, he has threatened to kill himself if she does not give in to his demands. He has kicked her out in front of their children, and she has stayed with numerous coworkers. Nothing inappropriate to my knowledge. We also strongly suspect he has been sabotaging her vehicles. Despite being unable to maintain steady employment, he does not want her to work and demands she stay at home and be vulnerable with the kids. He is the trashiest person I have ever known. Unfortunately, you cannot make someone leave if they are not ready. I hope she understands or that someone gets through to her one day so she can leave him behind for good, with as little visitation and parental control on his part as possible. Story 34. Jim was an alcoholic who worked under the table. He had 2 children. He never had a relationship with one and barely saw the other or paid child support for him. He was 30, my sister was 20, and she got pregnant. Jim was abusive and would cheat on her. They broke up early on. He would terrorize her through the courts and then not show up. He would threaten to kill her if she dated anyone. Eventually, he moved on to other naive young women. Eventually, my sister met my brother-in-law, who was eager to be a father to my nephew. My nephew wanted to take his last name, so they went to court against Jim. Jim screamed that it wasn't right for my nephew to have another man's last name. He was the father. My nephew told the judge he hadn't seen Jim in 5 years. Jim screamed, "It's been 3 years, Your Honor." The judge asked, "How far away do you live from your son?" Jim replied, "The next town over." Needless to say, my nephew has a wonderful dad and shares his name now. I look forward to hearing that Jim has passed away. Story 35. A long time ago, I worked with a man who had a 2-year-old daughter. She had beaten cancer, and their family was on state insurance at the time, so thankfully it did not cost them much financially. He asked me to participate in a cancer fundraiser one weekend where you bike for several miles and a charity donates money per mile. I went but did not see him or his family there, and I viewed it as an opportunity to get some exercise for a good cause. I later found out they never ended up attending the event. A few weeks later, we were on the job when he received a call. The charity provided his family approximately $10,000 from the fundraiser. Over the next few weeks, he bought speakers for his car, a flat-screen television, and a variety of designer clothes. I lost all respect for him after that. Even if he had no debt from his daughter's cancer treatment, why not invest it in a college fund or save it in case the cancer returned? Instead, he squandered it all on useless items. Story 36. My ex-girlfriend's mother constantly competed with me to try to one-up me. She was in significant debt to the point of having an individual voluntary arrangement and spent her days in bed, sleeping until evening and ordering takeaways. She was so lazy that she took a bucket to bed to urinate rather than go downstairs at night. She spent the entire year sleeping through the day and relying on her parents, taking 200 pounds a month from them to order unnecessary items online, pretending it was for bills and hiding the packages from her parents and my ex. This allowed her to go to Las Vegas for 5 days every year, making it seem like she was living a lavish lifestyle. She even told her sister she needed 500 pounds for bills, but she spent that on a holiday instead. She spent most of her day vaping and scrolling through social media while looking down on others. When she had her granddaughter, she gave her hair bows and sweets for breakfast. She is the laziest woman I have ever met, showing only sympathy for herself. Story 37. I used to be a really bad person. I had my hair slicked back, and I was constantly eating messy steaks. But some people change. I changed. Story 38. I'd have to think harder about the biggest lesson. The other day, a man at the bar was trying to give me unsolicited relationship and life advice. He was in his late 30s, unemployed, and never married. I'm in my early 40s, married, and have a very successful career. On second thought, maybe I'm the one at a loss. Story 39. My sister marries the biggest losers. My ex-brother-in-law purposefully works minimal hours in a seasonal business so he can collect unemployment for half the year and receive government assistance. He lives next door to his parents, is 50 years old, smokes marijuana all day, can barely put food on the table, and uses his son to help pay the mortgage. The child is worried about moving out at 20 years old because his father won't be able to afford the mortgage. He could triple his income with his business, but that would require him to work hard. I like the guy, but he is a real deadbeat and I have little respect for him. Her next spouse earns a decent living but has multiple children with different mothers whom he never married. He has tumultuous relationships and relies on my family because he has never been able to buy a house or save money due to his difficult relationships with his former partners, child support obligations, and poor spending habits. He is controlling and argumentative and has essentially driven our family apart because nobody likes him or wants to be around him. He has isolated my sister from her family. Meanwhile, my sister complains that she has no family support and feels miserable. The truth is, she did have support, but we could only handle so much of fixing her problems and dealing with her poor choices in men. I moved 800 miles away and I'm glad I did. Our mom is further away in Florida, and we both don't visit often for obvious reasons. Our dad is still alive, but he only shows up for celebrations and leaves quickly for everything else. He has always been that way as well. Surrounded by losers. Story 40. My cousin dropped out of community college 6 years ago. Since then, she has done nothing but play online Dungeons and Dragons. She will be 25 in a few weeks and has never had a job, does not have a driver's license, and is not even capable of cooking for herself when left home alone. Once, she ate nothing but peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and cereal for a week when her dad went on vacation without her. Her plan for the future is to ignore everyone who sees a problem with that and hope her dad will take care of her forever. Story 41. This is the same childhood friend I mentioned had nothing to offer my family. He left trash on the side of a mall and, when confronted, said, "The cleaners should be thanking me. I'm giving them a job." He went to the casino with a group of US, got dropped off at home, and then jumped back on a bus to head right back to the casino alone. Now he's 51 with no girlfriend, wife, or children. Honestly, he was just too toxic to keep in my life. Story 42. My cousin used to brag about how much cannabis he smoked and all the amounts he had. He would regularly talk about the people he encountered and robbed. He implied he had done other things, but I do not know if that was him exaggerating or not, so I will not comment. He was frequently in and out of jail and was even incarcerated for 2 years once. He even had his car damaged in a shooting and was in a coma for a week due to the situations he got himself into. He has a 7-year-old son while living this lifestyle. 2 years ago, one of his closest friends was shot and killed, which made him realize that if he did not change his ways, he would end up in the same position. He completely turned his life around. He stopped selling drugs, got a regular job selling cars, and although he is a convicted felon and will likely be on probation for most of his life, he changed for the better. So yes, my cousin used to be the biggest disappointment I knew, but I am proud of him for transforming his life. Story 43. My ex. He sexually assaulted me, so I broke up with him. He told everyone that I assaulted him and portrayed himself as a victim. He is also a fan of anime, the type that complains and gets upset if you insult his favorite character. Story 44. My girlfriend's son dropped out of high school at the age of 16 due to drug use. He has never held a job and has been in and out of jail. Now he is 27 and continues to engage in the same harmful behavior. It is honestly embarrassing. Story 45. An ex-girlfriend was so absorbed in herself that she didn't care about anyone else. She once attempted to give me a laxative in a Gatorade bottle, but when I noticed she had opened my bottle to add it, I switched our bottles when she wasn't watching. Soon, she felt the effects of the laxative. I shared this story with a podcast and they told it on their show. Story 46. There is a person who lives on the other side of my bathroom mirror. He is 29, but his style resembles that of a high school freshman from the early 2010s. He thinks his spiked hoop earrings, faded sides, and slicked back hair look cool. It is clear he listens to classic rock, and the tattoos are quite overwhelming. He decided it would be edgy and unique to sleeve only his left arm. What a character he is. He works as a salesman. Story 47. My brother is almost 40 and still lives with our mom. He has never worked a single day in his life and never graduated high school. He has not had a friend in over 20 years and has never had a girlfriend. He does have mental health issues and is on medication, but it is not severe enough to prevent him from having a life. He spends all his time watching television and playing video games. He has no skills whatsoever. Story 48. My ex-boyfriend stole my credit card to buy League of Legends skins and then tried to convince me it was a joint investment in our future because we could play together. Story 49. The man my mother married after my father's death was a deceitful and cruel person. He never worked a day in his life and relied on a trust fund. He abused me as a child, gave me items and then took them back, and often talked to himself in high-pitched voices in the early hours of the morning. He had uncontrollable anger and told me I had tainted blood from my father. He spied on me through cracks in doors and windows. The smell of Old Spice original deodorant triggers my PTSD. I later learned that his nickname as a child was Satan. Story 50. I knew a guy who was born into a family that was extremely wealthy, while my area was very much working class, so he was quite lucky. He seemed to fetishize the struggle and lived life like a bottom-of-the-barrel scoundrel. His own parents were so fed up with his behavior that they bought him a house just to get him away. I had some friends in difficult home situations who got kicked out and moved in with him. At that time, he was part of the group of friends, but by the time everyone moved out, they all swore they would never speak to him again, and we never did. Except for one of my friends. He suffered from schizophrenia, and because of that, he decided to stop using drugs which were prevalent in that group. The last time I saw him, he was clean. A year later, I received a phone call and heard he had overdosed and passed away. This person didn't want to take drugs alone, and because of his addictions and influence, a guy I knew lost his life. I could talk for days about what else this guy has done that qualifies him as the biggest loser, but I don't think anything is worse than that. Story 51. This guy I dated during my freshman year of college. His dad is very wealthy, working with a heating, ventilation, and air conditioning company that provides air conditioning for retail stores and movie theaters. I visited his dad's large house, where he had pictures of himself in military uniforms. He mentioned wanting to be a Marine but started smoking marijuana and was afraid to go to Afghanistan, so he never enlisted. His dad urged him to attend college, but he failed out because he smoked marijuana all the time and never attended class. There was trash all over his dorm. I don't know what I was thinking. I was 19. He was fun to smoke with all summer, but I left him behind to return to college. He became just a casual fling towards the end. Shortly before I graduated, I heard his dad cut him off, and he began couch surfing. The last time I saw him, he was a cook at a small bar and grill and had a couple of kids with a girl facing tough times. All that wasted potential because he never put the joint down. Story 52. In terms of holding down a job and being financially responsible, my brother stood out. However, he made up for it with the biggest heart of anyone I've ever known and was a truly kind man. He believed he was destined to be a rock star and played guitar in multiple local bands. He took his own life 6 years ago. I wish he were still here and could have achieved his dreams. I would have supported him until he got there. Story 53. I cannot identify just one person. Instead, there is a group of individuals with similar characteristics as follows. 1. They always complain but never change. They speak behind others' backs. They do not understand boundaries and probe into others' privacy, such as salary and marital status. They have unstable emotions and easily lose their temper. They are lazy yet envious of those who are working hard for their future. Story 54. Honestly, I have been struggling for the past couple of years and I am really hitting rock bottom. I have missed many chances and opportunities due to my actions. I have created excuses for myself, leading to constant self-pity that has turned into debilitating depression. However, I am aware of who I am and I am actively working as hard as I can to change my situation. I hope I find my way. Story 55. There is a manic-depressive high school dropout I got to know through a subculture. He is over 30 and has at least 15 face tattoos. He has never held a job for more than 3 days. He sells cocaine and counterfeit Xanax. He is not allowed in my province because he owes money to a motorcycle gang. He can't stay in the neighboring province due to connections with the Montreal Mafia. Somehow, he snagged the most beautiful, smart, and talented girlfriend and lost her within a month. The people he grew up with are hiring their customers to set him up for stings or robberies. Because of a debt and running his mouth, he was dragged behind a car through downtown Toronto. He stabbed a graffiti artist over a dispute and spent 3 years on and off house arrest for breaches. He is the ultimate scumbag, and I still don't know how I came to talk to this person. Story 56. My neighbor below me in the flat I live in. When I moved in, he and his very attractive girlfriend had just had a baby. He was earning well, and they seemed like a good young family. He started drinking more, neglecting his role as a father, lost his job, and continued to drink excessively. He began breaking in so he could sleep in the communal hallway instead of on the streets. His daughter, now 5 years old, had to step over his intoxicated body each morning to go to school. He kept hanging around outside the flat, watching his ex through her bedroom window while she was with other men. In the end, we had to change all the locks. His mother, who used to do childcare, had spare keys. He kept getting keys cut. She would wake up to find him standing over her in her bedroom. He was recently arrested for stalking. As far as I'm aware, he now lives on the streets. I offered to pay for a hostel for him. She has given him the benefit of the doubt many times. He just doesn't care about anyone but himself. He doesn't get his daughter Christmas or birthday gifts, and he doesn't make contact with her unless he wants to take a shower. Then he shows up under the pretense of wanting to see his daughter, ignores her, takes a shower, and leaves. He could have had a good life. Instead, he has fallen to become a failure. Story 57. One of my past roommates ate fast food for every meal and usually had a pint of ice cream for dessert. She went months without showering and never cleaned her room. When she left, there were piles of moldy food and unpleasant messes everywhere. She was very unclean, had a terrible odor, and a bad attitude. She was mean to everyone and started fights at any chance she could. She was definitely depressed, but that was no excuse to treat others poorly and live in such a messy way. Story 58. Back in the 1980s, my then-girlfriend won a radio contest, and I was her +1 to go backstage at a Cheap Trick concert. The band members were quite unpleasant. The singer openly tried to pursue my girlfriend, and when it became clear that it was not going to happen, he dismissed us abruptly. We did not see anyone from the band after that. The drummer never even spoke to us. He simply walked past without a greeting. Story 59. My ex-boyfriend. It is now clear that he was a raging alcoholic with a vaping and drug addiction. He would always lie about how much he drank when it was obvious to everyone. He also lied about how successful he and his family were, when in reality he was fired from his high-level job for being lazy, arriving late to work, and engaging in questionable business dealings. His family was unemployed and exploitative, yet they looked down on me, treated me poorly, and had high expectations. During the difficult 2.5 years we dated, he must have gained at least 60 pounds due to sheer laziness. His only pastimes were waking up around noon and then staying up all night drinking and damaging his liver. His snoring became so disruptive that I had to ask him to leave my room. He also became angry with me for not supporting him when he was fired, even though it was entirely preventable. I asked him how we could start a life together if he had no income. He lied and told everyone he would marry me one day and would ask me what rings I liked, despite having no intention of doing so while being $30,000 in debt and still living with his exploitative parents. His eating habits were incredibly limited. He would eat fruit rolls for breakfast and only plain bread, chicken, yellow cheese, and beer in place of water. We could never go on dates since he disliked all foods. Truly the biggest loser I ever met. Story 60. Man, these stories in the comments section are wholesome. Good job to all the stepdads who did amazingly. Story 61. My cousin's new boyfriend introduced himself at Thanksgiving by telling everyone he is a cryptocurrency millionaire and tried to convince my 80-year-old grandma to invest her retirement savings in a questionable coin. Story 62. A former roommate was a friend who wanted to move to my city for better job opportunities and to get away from his mother, whom he described as toxic and abusive. My husband and I had a guest room and agreed to let him stay for a few months. This man was 32 years old, but he lived in a rural state where there weren't many job opportunities. He worked remotely providing customer support to Apple users. When he arrived, instead of looking for new jobs or training programs, he decided to keep his Apple position. While that was an option, it did not pay well. He refused to consider community colleges and instead wanted to attend a sketchy, expensive proprietary school for programming. Worse, he had no life skills. He wore a hat all the time because his hair was matted. His personal hygiene was minimal. When he moved out, his whole room reeked of body odor. He also relied on us for food, used our cannabis, and wandered around the apartment in his boxers. He thought he could cook, but he absolutely could not. One time, he dumped 3 boxes of family-sized pasta into a pot at once. He would buy random items like squid, which he had no idea how to prepare, filling the apartment with horrible smells. He was also the loudest eater I have ever encountered, smacking his food like an elderly person without dentures. I couldn't sit next to him because his breath was foul from never brushing his teeth. We tried to kindly address these issues, but he would freak out and shut down, blaming us instead. Eventually, I realized he was the type to blame the women in his life for his failures. His mother was not perfect, but she tried to get him into therapy and financially supported him as an adult. He also has a sister who is very independent. She possesses basic life skills and has traveled the country for her career, which she loves. He blamed her for his lack of success. He ultimately moved back in with his mother. I hope he eventually learns how to live independently instead of playing the perpetual victim. Story 63. My cousin's husband lost about 150 pounds in 4 months. Turned out he had celiac disease, which was challenging. He is also not a good husband, father, or person overall. Story 64. A relative of mine is a difficult person. He is stubborn, lacks empathy, and can be rude and aggressive. Many people I know have stopped talking to him for years. He is completely alone. Despite this, he continues to act as if he is a victim. To me, he is someone who has not learned from his mistakes. Story 65. My former friend abused me. He would manipulate me and pointed a gun at me. When he pulled the trigger, fire came out. It was a lighter, and he laughed at how scared I looked. I cut him off in 2021 and haven't looked back. Karma caught up with him and now he's balding. I also forgot to mention that he would throw his small dog at me. Overall, he was not a nice person. Story 66. A man I have known for decades was the kid who would turn off the Nintendo if he started losing. He would say, "We're at my house, so we do what I want," or "I'm the guest, so we do what I want." He screamed and swore at his mother in public if he didn't get his way in every little thing. He idolized his abusive father, teamed up with him against his mother, and demanded the most expensive, top-of-the-line items for whatever hobby he liked that week. He would immediately break those items and move on to the next interest, claiming to be a downhill biker, robotics enthusiast, marksman, or guitarist. He got kicked out of school a couple of weeks before graduating, after his mother had done his homework for 12 years. He began working on his father's website. His father was a bankruptcy accountant, which my father described as being a vulture, picking over the bones of people's dead dreams. The website was basically a list of links to other firms for people who couldn't use search engines, and it quickly became obsolete. He clung to it for years, claiming he was going to revolutionize it to compete with search engines despite having no work ethic, knowledge, or training in search engine optimization, coding, or marketing. He takes secret trips to obscure villages in poor countries and stays with families who don't speak English but drink excessively. He returned once with a severe limp that he wouldn't explain. He has never lived on his own, except when his father died in front of him in their house, which they had turned from a mansion into a pit of squalor after his mother finally left. He started renting it out on a home-sharing platform but made no repairs and claimed he was entertaining guests and making a profit. However, the property is in the middle of nowhere and resembles a serial killer's estate. He took out loans on the property for renovations, believing he had made that money because it appeared in his account, but no renovations were ever made. He spends his days drinking, smoking, and playing video games. When asked what he is up to, he makes wild claims about his website and his rental property. His real estate activities involve making his mother buy properties for him to fix up and rent out, but he rarely visits them unless she forces him to sell. He drinks in her basement after moving in with her following the sale of his father's house. He has held only 2 jobs, both entry-level positions, and struggled to keep them for more than a few months. He has totaled more cars than I have ever owned and persuades his mother to buy him new ones, which must meet his high expectations, such as being new and of luxury brand or the highest tier of a luxury brand's consumer line, like a nice Toyota or a Lexus. He treats those around him poorly, believing that being born to an upper-middle-class father makes him superior. However, he can barely keep himself clean and makes his mother's life a living hell. He almost let her die from neglect while she battled cancer. Even though he is a middle-aged man with a driver's license, credit cards, no job, and no significant deficits aside from a limp and his behavior, he doesn't take her to appointments or support her in any way. When given the chance, he doesn't even ask how she is doing. He seemed almost excited when he thought she would die soon, as he started selling off her assets and planning for his inheritance. She has been in remission for years and will likely continue for many more, which suits him fine because she funds his life, makes his food, does his laundry, defends him to others, and absorbs the responsibility for his irresponsible financial decisions. When she passes away, he will continue the same lifestyle, relying on food delivery services, and will likely end up in a worse state of squalor. I estimate he will last 10 years at most after her death, and it will be a horror for whoever finds his body. Story 67. My wife's last boyfriend before we got together was someone we all attended high school with. He and I were never on friendly terms, but I had no real opinion of him until she started sharing things later. The most significant thing to me was that he was offered a full scholarship along with a monthly stipend to attend college. Essentially, he was going to be paid to go to college. A few days before he was set to leave, he decided to stay home and work in a factory instead. Ultimately, his goal was to be a stay-at-home dad. Many families operate that way, and plenty of men have worked and lived successful lives in factory jobs. However, this individual was not one of them. Afterward, he married a girl my wife disliked, almost exactly 2 weeks after we got married. They went on their honeymoon to the same state we did, just 2 weeks later. They traveled everywhere in that state except where we went. Then they won by having children before us. We can't have kids, and theirs are, as my grandma would say, uglier than homemade sin. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.